Story 1. This happened when I was 9 years old, back when Halloween still felt like the most exciting night of the year. My mom had to work late that night, so she dropped me off at my friend Max's house around 4:30. Max lived on Alder Street, just a few blocks away from me, and his mom had said it was okay for me to trick or treat with Max and his cousin Eli. I thought she was going to come with us, maybe walk behind us or wait at the curb like my mom usually did. But once I stepped inside the house and she waved goodbye from the door, I realized we were going to be on our own. I was a little nervous but didn't want to seem like a baby, especially in front of Max and Eli, who were both a year older than me. They were already dumping extra pillowcases into their backpacks, talking about which blocks had the best candy last year. I didn't say much, just followed along. Max's house felt different than mine. No decorations, dim lighting, and it smelled like laundry that had been left in the washer too long. His mom seemed distracted, barely looking up from her phone as we left the house. I remember thinking it was weird that she didn't tell us to be careful or set any rules. The sky was just starting to darken when we stepped outside. The neighborhood looked festive, a mix of pumpkins on porches and orange lights strung up on fences. Other kids were already out in costumes, running from door to door. For the first hour or so, it was fun. We hit all the usual houses, the ones with full-size candy bars and friendly old couples. A few people asked where our parents were, and Eli would just point down the block and say, "She's up ahead with my little sister." It worked every time. The sun dipped below the trees fast. By 7:30, it was completely dark and fewer kids were out. We had filled half our pillowcases, and Max wanted to keep going. He said the other side of Alder had houses we hadn't touched yet. I felt unsure, but I didn't want to be the one to ruin it, so we walked. It got quieter the farther we went. No more kids shouting or running. No parents or talking on the sidewalks. Just the sound of our sneakers on the pavement and the occasional dog barking from someone's yard. Streetlights buzzed overhead, casting yellow pools of light that didn't quite reach the middle of the road. A few houses still had porch lights on, but some were already dark. We knocked anyway. Some answered, some didn't. That was when Max said, "Hey, let's try Elm Street." Elm was even further out, not a place I had ever been to at night. I hesitated but followed. I kept looking back, feeling like someone was behind us. But every time I turned, the street was empty. My hands were getting cold from holding the candy bag. Eli was starting to joke about being hungry and wanting pizza. I was starting to wish I had stayed home. Then, right as we were crossing to the other side of Elm, Max said, "Look, someone else is trick-or-treating." I turned and saw a man pushing a stroller about 2 houses down. He was walking slowly, like he had nowhere to be. We stopped to let him pass, but instead he walked toward us with a slight smile. "Hey boys," he said. "How's the candy hunt going?" His voice was quiet, almost too calm. I felt something shift in my stomach, but I smiled anyway and said, "Pretty good." He looked down at the stroller and said, "She's asleep, but I've got a whole bunch of candy I didn't get to give out. Want it?" Max and Eli glanced at each other. I stood still, not sure what to say. That was the moment everything started to feel off. Max was the first to say something. "What kind of candy?" The man smiled again, a little too long this time. "Oh, you know, Snickers, Skittles, maybe some Kit Kats. Got a few bags left. My house is just down the street. Won't take long." He nodded forward, toward a small blue house at the end of the block. The porch light was off, and there weren't any Halloween decorations. I didn't want to go. Something about the way he kept glancing at the stroller without ever actually checking on. The baby felt weird, but Max started walking, and Eli followed right behind him. I didn't want to be alone, so I went too. As we walked, the man asked us where we lived, what school we went to, and how late we were planning to stay out. I let Max and Eli do most of the talking. My voice didn't feel like working. I kept looking around, and the street felt quieter than before, like even the wind had stopped moving. I couldn't hear anything except the wheels of the stroller softly rattling over the sidewalk cracks. A few times, the man leaned over the stroller and whispered something in a soft, high-pitched voice. It was like baby talk, but something about it made my skin crawl. He never pulled back the stroller cover. I couldn't even see a blanket or a little hand or anything. Just the cover pulled all the way down like a shell. We got to his house, and he pushed the stroller up the front steps. The porch creaked under his weight. He fumbled with the keys for a second, then opened the door and pushed the stroller inside. "Come on in," he said. "I'll grab the bags." Max stepped through the doorway first. Eli followed, so I did too. I remember how cold it felt inside. No lights were on, just the dim glow from a single lamp in the hallway. The house smelled like dust and old wood. The kind of smell you get in places that haven't been lived in for a long time. "You can leave the door open," I said quietly. The man paused, then nodded. Sure. I'll be right back." He disappeared down the hallway. The stroller was left right there, in the middle of the room, still completely covered. Max stared at it. I could tell something was running through his head. He walked over and reached for the cover. I didn't say anything. I just watched. He slowly lifted the fabric. His face changed instantly. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then he dropped the cover, turned to me, and whispered fast, "We need to go. Now." He grabbed Eli's arm and bolted for the door. I followed, my legs heavy from the weight of my pillowcase. We ran out into the street, breathing hard. I didn't even look back. A woman's voice suddenly called out, Hey, boys!" We stopped. A neighbor from across the street came rushing toward us. She looked scared. "Do you know that man?" she asked. Max shook his head and said, "He said he had candy, but there's no baby in the stroller." His voice cracked when he said it. The woman looked horrified. "He doesn't have a child. I've seen him around. You boys come with me right now." She took us to her car and drove each of us home. My mom was already back by the time I got there. When the woman explained what happened, my mom pulled me inside and shut the door. I told her everything, every single detail. She was shaking. That night, my parents called the police. I never found out what came of it. They didn't tell me, they didn't want me to know. All I know is I never saw that man again, and I was never allowed to go trick-or-treating without an adult ever again. Story 2. It was Halloween night, and I was home alone. My parents had gone out to dinner with some family friends, and I had volunteered to stay back and hand out candy. I was 19 at the time, in my second year of college, and I figured it would be an easy night. We never got a lot of trick-or-treaters anyway. Our house sat at the very end of a quiet cul-de-sac in Albany, and most kids didn't bother walking all the way down. My dog Bruno was with me, a small beagle who barked at just about everything, including his own reflection. I spent most of the afternoon working on assignments and waiting for the doorbell. Between 5 and 8 p.m., maybe 10 kids came by. It was pretty uneventful. Around 8:30, things had quieted down. I turned off the porch light to signal we were done giving out candy. I heated up some leftover soup, brought it to my room, and started watching an old episode of The Office on my laptop. Bruno curled up at the foot of my bed, half asleep. It felt like any other quiet evening, but around 9:30, the doorbell rang again. Bruno jumped up, barking like crazy. I paused the video, kind of confused. The porch light was off. It was late. No kid should still be out trick-or-treating, especially not on a Tuesday. I got up and looked out the window beside the front door. There was someone standing there, a very tall figure dressed in a full clown costume, complete with a red wig and a white mask. He was holding a brown paper sack and waving slowly. I didn't open the door. I just stood there, heart picking up speed. He didn't say anything, just stood there and waved, like he was waiting for me to do something. Through the glass I said, "Sorry, we're out of candy." Then I locked the deadbolt and walked away from the door. I felt uneasy, but I figured maybe it was just some older teenager being weird or trying to scare people. I tried to settle back into my bed, but Bruno kept pacing by the window and whining. I waited a few minutes and then crept back downstairs. I stood by the door and listened. I didn't hear footsteps walking away. I didn't hear anything. Then the doorbell rang again. My whole body tensed. Bruno barked even louder this time. I picked him up and turned off all the lights downstairs. I carried him back to my room, shut the door, and just stood there, heart pounding. I checked my phone and sent a message to my parents, just letting them know someone strange had come by and rang the bell late. No reply. I texted my older brother, but he just wrote back, "It's probably just a prank. Ignore it." Maybe he was right. Maybe it was just someone trying to mess with people. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I sat back on my bed, phone in hand, every sound making me jump. Then I heard it, a sharp metallic click from downstairs. It sounded like the storm door latch being forced open. My blood went cold. A second later, I heard a thump against the front door. Then the door handle rattled. That wasn't a prank. That was someone trying to get in. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just sat there, frozen, while Bruno growled quietly by my feet. I didn't know what to do. I just kept hoping whoever it was would give up and leave. But something told me he wasn't done yet. I sat on the edge of my bed for what felt like forever, holding Bruno close while trying to listen for any more sounds downstairs. The rattling had stopped, and the silence that followed was almost worse. I didn't know if the man had left or if he was still out there, maybe just standing quietly, waiting. I kept checking my phone, hoping someone would text back, but no new messages came in. My parents were probably still at dinner. My brother had gone silent, and I didn't feel like calling anyone else because I didn't want to say the words out loud. I didn't want it to be real. After a while, I started to feel like maybe it really was over. I hadn't heard anything else. Bruno had stopped growling and was now curled up beside me again, eyes droopy. I turned off the lights in my room and got under the blanket. Still fully dressed, my phone right on my chest. I left the television off so I could listen. Total silence. Eventually, I started drifting off, my body finally giving in to the exhaustion. I don't know how long I was asleep. It could have been 20 minutes. Could have been 2. But I woke up to the sound of Bruno growling again. Low, quiet, alert. I didn't move at first. I just opened my eyes and stared into the dark room. I whispered his name, and he stayed perfectly still, eyes locked on the window across the room. My heart was instantly back in my throat. I turned my head slowly, eyes adjusting to the faint light from the street. That was when I saw it. A face, right outside my second-floor window, pressed against the glass. The clown mask. I remember the bright white of the face paint and the way the eye holes didn't line up perfectly with his real eyes behind them. He didn't move, just tilted his head slowly, watching me. I couldn't even scream. My body just locked up. My skin went cold. It didn't make any sense. There was no balcony, no porch roof, no way for anyone to be up there. But he was, right there, looking at me through the glass, like he'd been waiting for me to wake up. I finally managed to move. I grabbed my phone and Bruno and ran to my parents' room, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type 911. When the dispatcher answered, my voice was trembling so much that I had to repeat myself 3 times. She kept telling me the police were on the way, to stay on the line, to stay in the room. I kept asking her how long they'd be. It felt like hours. When the cops finally got there, I heard their voices outside, then a knock on the front door. I stayed on the phone with the dispatcher the whole time. When I let them in, I was still shaking. They searched the property and found that the latch on our storm door had been broken, just like I thought. But that wasn't the worst part. Leaning against the side of the house, right underneath my window, was my dad's extension ladder. It had been taken out of the storage shed. That man had gone into our backyard, opened the shed, pulled out the ladder, and carried it across the lawn in the dark just to get to my window. He didn't try to break the glass. He didn't try to come in. He just wanted to be seen. I didn't sleep in my room for weeks after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that mask. The police never found him. I don't even know if they really tried. All I know is someone went that far on Halloween night just to scare me, or maybe something worse. Story 3. This happened last Halloween weekend. I go to school in Tempe, and that Saturday night was when all the big parties were happening. My friends and I didn't have anything planned, which was stressing us out because everything seemed either sold out or super far away. We were 4 girls. Me, Ivy, Sam, and Brooke. And we had gone all out with our costumes. I think we were just desperate to go somewhere and show them off. Ivy ended up posting on her Snapchat story asking if anyone had party info. She actually got a reply from some guy we sort of knew. Matt, I think, who sent her the address to a party that night. He said his friend Luke was throwing it, and it was supposed to be huge. Ivy screenshotted the info and dropped it in our group chat. The message had a house address, a start time, and some ground rules. Bring your own drinks, don't go in the backyard, and every guy has to bring a girl. Honestly, it sounded a little sketchy, but the house was close, and we were all already dressed and ready. So we said whatever, and we pre-gamed at Sam's place before calling an Uber around 10. When we got to the house, there were cars parked all up and down the street, and we could hear the bass thumping from inside. The house was pretty big, with a long driveway and barely any lights outside. We were excited, honestly. 4 girls arriving together? We figured they'd be happy to let us in. As we walked up, a man opened the door before we even knocked. He was older, like way older, maybe in his 50s. He had a red Solo cup in one hand and a weirdly friendly smile. He said, "Welcome, welcome. You must be friends with Luke's." Ivy nodded, and he stepped aside to let us in. "I'm Jim, Luke's dad," he said. "Come on, put your drinks in the kitchen. Make yourselves at home." Inside, the place was dimly lit with string lights and orange bulbs, just enough to see but not enough to really notice details. Music was playing from a speaker in the corner. The weird thing was, the house was packed with people, but nobody looked familiar. Not one person. Usually you recognize someone from campus or Instagram or something, but this felt like a completely different crowd. Jim kept hovering near us, asking our names, offering to make us drinks. I remember thinking it was kind of strange how involved he was for a dad. Most parents would be hiding upstairs, not handing out shots to college kids. He kept talking to us, mostly to Ivy and Brooke, and asking what we liked to drink. When we said vodka, he disappeared for a second, then came back with drinks already made. I took mine, but only sipped it slowly. It tasted weird. Not bad, just kind of off. But I didn't want to be rude. We played beer pong with some guys at a table in the back, but I couldn't focus. Something about the house felt wrong. There was no furniture. I mean, literally none. No couches, no dining table. Just folding tables with drinks and people standing around. I thought maybe they moved stuff to make room, but even the walls looked bare, like nobody lived there. I plugged my phone into a corner outlet and went back to the group. I was starting to feel a little dizzy, but I figured it was just the drink, or maybe I hadn't eaten enough. But then, just a few minutes later, everything started to blur. I couldn't follow conversations. My legs felt heavy. The last thing I remember clearly was leaning on the wall, trying to find my phone, and then nothing. I don't remember getting home. I just remember waking up in the backseat of a car with Ivy shaking my shoulder, saying we were outside my house. I couldn't tell if it was late or early. Everything looked blurry. I felt dizzy, like I had been spinning in circles for an hour. One of our guy friends walked me to the front door. I don't even remember what he said. I just nodded and went inside. My parents were asleep upstairs. I didn't want to wake them, so I went straight to my room and collapsed onto the bed without even changing. My head was still spinning, and my mouth was dry. I checked my phone, just out of habit, and that's when I saw the messages. They were from a number I didn't have saved. It started with me texting my name. "Hi, it's Rachel." The next reply said, "John." Uh-oh. Then another one. "You looked so cute." The timestamps showed these were sent during the party. But I didn't remember ever giving my number to anyone. There was a gap of about 2 hours, and then more messages. "Where did my favorite girls go? You left something here. I'm coming to your house. Can you come to the door? Hello?" He also called me 3 times. All of it was between 2 and 3, and I felt a pit in my stomach. I immediately sent screenshots to our group chat and asked if anyone remembered this guy or saw me talking to him. That's when Ivy replied and said, "Rachel, that's the guy. The dad. The one who kept making drinks." My heart dropped. The man who said he was Luke's dad. Jim. I didn't remember giving him my number, but if he made my drink, it would make sense. Sam chimed in and said they started noticing I was getting weird, unsteady, quiet, kind of out of it. They decided to leave, and luckily one of our guy friends had just arrived and helped carry me to the car. But none of us had seen Luke. Not once. When Ivy said that out loud, it hit all of no one had ever met this so-called Luke. No photos of him, no introductions, nothing. Just Jim. Brooke looked up the phone number using some website her cousin showed her once, and it came up as a voice over IP number. Basically, a fake phone number. Ivy said, "If he has your number, he could have found your address." I started shaking. That man had been in the house with us, possibly drugging people, and now he was texting me in the middle of the night like he knew where I lived. We decided to go to the police. We brought everything. Screenshots, the phone number, everything we remembered. At the front desk, the officer asked if this had anything to do with the house party at the vacant home on Monroe Avenue. That was the address we went to. I asked him what he meant by vacant. He said the house had been empty for months. The owners had moved out. Neighbors called to report a loud party at an abandoned property. My friends and I just looked at each other, stunned. That meant Jim wasn't anyone's dad. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He had set up the party in an empty house and invited people, especially girls, through mutual friends and random contacts. The detective who spoke with us said they'd try to trace the number, but that it might take time. I blocked it. Days passed. Nothing ever came of it. We never heard back. But I still think about what would have happened if my friends hadn't noticed something was wrong. Suppose they hadn't pulled me out when they did, or if I had been alone. And I still wonder, how many girls gave him their number that night?